What is going on, my friends? We're back with another video, and today's video is going to be all about how you can create your own training program, and more specifically this is going to be focused on to create a weightlifting program. So the first thing we have to identify is simply going to be your availability, and when it comes to availability, I want you to pick a realistic and sustainable number, because just because you want to exercise 6 times per week, that doesn't mean that's going to be realistic for you. So pick a number that's going to be sustainable and going to be likely that you can stick to in the long run, because otherwise there's not going to be much of a point to structure a training program around it. So the second point that we want to dive into is simply going to be structure. And before I want to dive into structure, I want to emphasize a certain point, and that is going to be that when it comes to maximizing muscle gain and hypertrophy, it's going to be very important that we're training our body parts at least twice per week. So there's been numerous studies showing that even when the volume is exactly the same, we get superior results when we're training our body parts twice per week. So that's really important. You can get more out of the same amount of effort as long as you're hitting your body parts at least twice per week. So when we're diving into the structure of someone that's training 3 times per week, we could divide that into a upper body session, a lower body session, and a full body session. But we could also do 3 times full body. Now, both of those are going to elicit great results simply because we're training our entire body at least twice, but for me personally, I would find it way more enjoyable to have a upper body session followed by a lower body session into a full body session, simply because I don't find full body training that enjoyable. I find it so much more enjoyable when I can get into the gym and I know, okay, this session I'm going to be only focusing on my legs, or this session I'm only going to be focused on my upper body. So that's another thing we want to factor in when it comes to the structure. We want to pick what we find enjoyable and what actually makes training fun, because that makes it more likely that we will stick to it and increase our longevity with the training program, which is obviously something we want to achieve. And another note when it comes to structure is simply that the more days we have available to us, the more we can play around with the structure. So when we're looking at the person that's going to train 6 times per week, they could do 6 full body sessions, they could do push, pull, legs, repeating that twice, but they could also do upper, lower, repeating that 3 times. So it just comes down to the more amount of days you're training, the more you can play around with the structure. And like I said, just pick the structure that's going to bring you the most enjoyment and fulfillment, because that's going to help you stick to it and get the best results in the long run. So when we're diving into equipment, we simply want to identify what you have available to yourself and start working backwards from there. So as I'm filming this video, there's a lot of people that don't have access to their gyms right now because of the COVID situations and all the restrictions and lockdowns. So if that's the case, that you don't have access to your gym right now, but you have dumbbells and resistance bands, you simply have to accept the fact, okay, so I have dumbbells, I have resistance bands, what exercises can I perform with those? So it's simply identifying what we have available and start working backwards from there. So for example, you're not going to be able to program in barbell back squat or barbell bench press now that you only have resistance bands and dumbbells, obviously, but you could do dumbbell floor presses, which would be a great replacement. So it's just being creative what we have available for us. And the fourth point is simply going to be what our goals are. So all good training programs have certain goals in mind. So whether you're a person in your 40s that's trying to maintain your strength and achieve longevity, your training is going to be very different to a person that's going into the gym with the sole purpose of maximizing muscles, getting abs, looking good naked, whatever it might be. So I'll give an example right now with my training program. My training program right now is a low volume, high intensity training program with the intention of building strength and muscle. So each time that I go into the gym, it's extremely important that I'm exposing myself to a new amount of stress that I haven't been able to expose myself to before. So, for example, if I'm doing deadlifts and I'm lifting 100 kilos for 10 repetitions, that's going to be the workload I did that week. But if I'm coming back the next week and I perform 11 repetitions instead of 10 with the same amount of weight, that's going to achieve progressive overload. And if I did the exact same amount of repetitions and weight as last week, but I reduced my rest times, that's going to be progressive overload. And the final example is going to be, let's say that I lifted 100 kilos times 10 in week 1, but in week 2 I lift 110 kilos times 10s. That's going to be progressive overload, because now I have exposed myself to a new amount of stress that my body hasn't experienced before. So that's going to elicit progressive overload, which is the most important factor when it comes to building muscle and getting stronger. So if those are goals that you have in mind, it's extremely important that your program is built around progressive overload. So it doesn't matter if it's built around on increasing the weight, the repetitions, or reducing the rest times, but you need one of those to actually get stronger and build muscle. So the final one that we're going to dive into is volume and intensity. And this is kind of like a puzzle. And to get you guys thinking in the right way, I just want to, let's use a person as an example that has extremely strong biceps, and no matter what they do, their biceps are growing like crazy. But at the same time, their triceps are very stubborn. They're spending so much time trying to build their triceps, but not much is happening. So when factoring that person's training program, it's likely going to be that his biceps are more developed than his triceps. So what we could do when we factor into the volume, we could reduce the amount of volume that we're putting onto the biceps and put some of that volume onto the triceps, because then we're moving some of the volume from a strong part to a weaker part. And if asymmetry is important, that's going to be extremely crucial. And the final one is simply going to be intensity. And intensity is based on RPE, which stands for rate of perceived exertion, and that's not hugely important, but I just want you guys to start thinking of these numbers. So this is RPE 10, this is RPE 9, this is RPE 8, and this is RPE 7. So this is just an intensity number. So for example, let's say you have a lot of volume. Let's say that you're spending like 80 minutes in your gym sessions. Then you likely want to be in the RPE 7, because as you're in the gym, as you're lifting so much amount of weight, you constantly have to leave repetitions in the tank. So if you see in the columns right here, these are, if I'm performing an RPE 10, I got 0 repetitions left in the tank. That was complete muscle failure. But if it's an RPE 9, I got 1 repetition left in the tank. So the intensity was slightly lower, and now I have some more energy left for the next set. So like I said, when we're looking at the person that's in the gym for like 80 hours, we want slightly lower intensity, so we have some reps in the tank. But like I said, my training goals right now, it was low volume, high intensity. So I need to be around here, because I'm training a short amount of time. I'm only in the gym for 40 minutes right now during my session. So the amount of my working sets have to be really intense for my training to actually give me that stress that I need to perform, and for the training to be viable and effective. So this is the final portion that we have to factor in. So let's say that I were to double my training load. So instead of being in the gym for 40 minutes, I'm being in the gym for 80 minutes. Then I would have to increase the amount of volume, and I would have to decrease the amount of intensity. So volume and intensity are highly interconnected, and I just wanted you guys to get you focused in those type of thinking. So that's how we create your own training program, and hope all of this made sense, and let me know if you have any questions. Take care.